So a few observations in test fitting the Triggercam unit to the 3x9 Nikon. The depth in the interior of the lower portion of the tube of the Triggercam. It has a shelf down there, and so I believe you want to push the Triggercam all the way onto the back of the scope until the shelf mates with the back of the scope. I say that because as you're using these adapters, you want about 2 millimeters of gap on the adapter, so this would be a correctly fitted adapter. Obviously that probably is too far back, so when you're trying to determine at what depth to put this adapter, the adapter itself has a ridge, and that's meant to catch the front of the Triggercam. As such. So the Triggercam mates with the front shelf, and then this is the underside of the scope, which I believe is where the slit for the adapter should go. And then what I'm doing is I'm pushing the Triggercam all the way until the interior shelf meets with the back of the rear objective. For the 3x9 Nikon, I've got the image square as possible through the view, so I'm going to lock down the I'm going to torque down the nut here so that the Triggercam is locked into place. Tighten it up, and then you will adjust the focus of the Triggercam. And I'll use my phone and an application to do that in order to get a clear picture. So let's run through that real quick. Alright, instead of trying to do this at the range tomorrow outdoors, I just want to try and demonstrate what I was talking about in terms of when I look with my eye through the back of the 3x9 Nikon with the Triggercam put onto it. I can see the entire circular view of the reticle through the back of the Triggercam. Now, you have to attempt to focus the Triggercam unit with the Nikon at its highest magnification at 100 yards. Once you achieve a focus with the Triggercam, then as you come down, it stays pretty much in focus from there. So that's how I understand how to set up the system. So the current view, the reticle is not in focus. And again, as you can see, we've got probably 70% of the entire view showing through the Triggercam, and that's what will be recorded, not the full view, but the limited view is what I'm going to call it. So in order to focus the Triggercam, you take off the rear cover plate, and it has a dial internally, and you just turn that dial left or right. I start with it all the way clockwise, bottomed out. You should start to see the reticle come into focus. Let me see. There we go. Now you can see the circles of the BDC, the ballistic drop compensation. So let's hold there for a second. So I turn this counterclockwise, left, and you can see the gap there now between where that was bottomed out to where it sits now. Okay. Now what I've noticed, and this may have no effect whatsoever, but since I'm testing and evaluating this, I mention it. What I've noticed is when you come out that far, that there's a little bit of play in that knob. So much so that, let me see, that's that knob making that sound. And I did notice when I shake that it actually does somewhat have an effect on the stability of the image. So right there, are you stabbing at it?
Yeah.
So that focus ring is not really tight, and that's where the partial earplug comes into play. So I'll show you what I'm doing to sort of help keep that as still as possible when I apply the cover back on. And then I am holding the scope hardware, and when I shake this, it has a little bit of a rattle, and that rattle is the focus adjustment knob being backed away and it's shaking. So what I did is I took a earplug, I cut a small piece, full diameter, and I laid that on top. And then I get the cover, and as I tighten the cover down, no more rattle. So that's just providing enough downward pressure on that knob to keep it locked in to place. And final verification. So the reticle is in clear focus. So tomorrow we'll shoot at the range and see that the targets downrange at 30 yards and 100 yards are also in focus. So, seems to be a success for Triggercam with the 3x9 Nikon. I'm going to take it off and next try it with a 4x16 Hawk scope with illuminated reticle.